especially if you say, before you leave the house, you say, I'm going to the coffee shop to write and work. And your brain takes note of that. Oh, we're going to the coffee shop to write and work. Then you arrive in the coffee shop and your brain says, oh, this is the coffee shop. We're going to write and work now. So it's one of those psychological tricks that you're doing to your brain, but it works. It
Right.
works. Your brain picks up on that and it works.
Welcome to Pros Talking Prose with Stacey and Troy. We're ready to cut heads off. No, just kidding. Sorry about my office being
I'm just going to clip my nails.
You should see my desk right now. Like I literally, there's not very much room on here. I have a hammer. There's a hammer right here, and there's like scissors, and there's all
That's
kinds
not
of stuff
even a
going.
real hammer or real scissors. Are those toys
This is my hanging
for your
picture.
future grandchildren? Show those scissors again.
Those are
Those
my
of you who are listening to this podcast, you're missing out. There's some tiny little pink and green
They are
scissors.
so sharp, though. They are so sharp. They're the little,
Okay.
they're little,
Right.
they're
Well, don't
tiny.
give those to the
Yeah.
grandkids then.
No,
And let
but
them run.
I am going to do this is my
my.
new crest. So yeah, so
Okay.
what's happening back here is I'm just going to explain it really quick. If you're on YouTube, you can see this, but I drive my family crazy. I got some inspiration. Plug this in.
See what I did there?
See what I did? So I
Uh,
got some inspiration from a client of mine who was commenting one day when we were having a Zoom meeting, and she says, "Are those all your books that you have over there?" And I'm like, "No, I have loads of books. I have some more books over here, and I have some books over here." And she's like, I only can see that looks like you just have a few books." And I'm like, "Oh, like that shouldn't be. I like my books, and I love because I collect books for a lot of times for book covers because I really love book covers. And for, I have several copies of the same book because of book covers. I love them. So I'm gonna put my pretty books up here. I've decided. So my poor family, I broke down and got some bigger bookshelves so that I can get a little bit more creative with my books that I like to have. In the meantime, it's created kind of a mess in my office, but I'm very excited about the end result when it happens.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So that's why I'm
great
holding.
to see that next week.
Yeah. So I'm holding Sting right now because he hangs up on my wall, and my husband was very kind to point out that my new bookshelves have taken away the spot for my Gandalf staff and my Sting. So I have to find a new place for these guys. Anyway, we'll figure it out.
Yes.
But anyway, I'm very excited to talk to you guys about inspiration today. Troy and I were talking about how we were going to help authors take the inspiration that they get and maybe capture it or understand and know how to use it and when to use it. And so I think we're going to go about this kind of like the first thing. Let's kind of define inspiration a little bit. I'm going to say a spark or an idea that you get. It's not always a plan. What it is it's just that spark or that inspiration. And what you need to do is you need to understand and know how to hold on to it long enough that you can act upon that idea later. Because a lot of times those ideas come at really inopportune times. Mine always come while I'm in the shower.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we will talk about that because I had a friend of mine who actually put a waterproof board with waterproof markers in the shower on the wall and would write ideas on there. Now, sometimes that didn't work out. You get a little aggressive with the towel when you get out and you end up wiping off part of it or whatever.
Right.
Or the steam is just a little much or whatever.
Yeah,
but
I gotcha. But still, that's a good idea, though.
Idea.
That is a really good idea.
Another friend of mine, his day job, I think he was an electrician for his day job before he started writing full time, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of times he would be under like houses or under doing
Right.
stuff under things. So he got a pen that wrote upside down, one of those upside down writing pens, and like
Yeah.
this notebook that had like this, it was really tough paper, almost like waterproof paper or something like that, but really tough paper,
Smart.
and would write ideas and then shove it in like his tool belt, and just always have it
Oh,
with
that's a
him.
good idea.
He said it
Yeah.
did create some awkward moments when like he'd have an idea and he'd be laying under writing it, and his coworkers like, "What are you doing under there, man?" You know. So,
That's funny. Well, I
you know,
will
and
say,
all of a sudden he stopped moving. Just they're
yeah,
like,
like it's just I don't know. Yeah, I mean, oh, I don't know. Sometimes I get my ideas when I'm watching another movie or like when I'm, like it always comes like you get the best ideas, right? When you're bored or when your brain is free thinking. I know you've mentioned a couple times you've gotten ideas from dreams or in the middle of the night
mm-hmm,
getting an idea. Like we've talked about the woo-woo of writing and how these ideas sometimes come to us. So, it isn't abnormal for you to come into a really good idea at a place and time when you don't have that pen or paper, right? So, what we want to do is we want to kind of talk about what to do when inspiration strikes and maybe some tricks and tips on how to kind of remember those things so that
yeah,
later you can go back to when you have your writing time or your ability to write it down, that you can and you will remember. It won't be like a dream that's just fleeting. Speaking of funny dreams, I had a
uh,
dream the night before last that I even called Troy. I was like, texted Troy. I'm like, don't you ever betray me. Because I was like, I had this dream where we went to a conference and Troy was telling people he didn't know me. I was like,
I don't know who that
I
is.
don't
I
know who
know
that is.
it was that fear you had from our AI debacle.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So I was like, he hates me. He's mad at me.
oh
Something's
no, no,
wrong.
no.
Like it was so funny.
Oh my
But
goodness.
anyway, I was laughing. But anyway, so one of the things I want to, there's a couple things like when inspiration hits, tell me what you think about these. First,
Okay.
jotting down images or thoughts or kind of just short phrases that can kind of jar that memory. A lot of times when I was in school, especially when I went back as an old lady, they taught us how to take notes because you have to remember how to take notes. And so one of the things they talked about was writing things down in a way that would help start the thought process again so that you're remembering how that all came into your brain in the first place. It's kind of a way to trigger the short-term memory so that you can remember. So
Hmm.
even if it's like, oh, I was laying in bed and this came to me, or like, or if it was just like with my dream with Troy, conference, didn't know who I was. Like that would literally throw me
That's
back into that.
enough to trigger
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
memory.
So talk to Troy about that. But capture the feeling associated with it as well. So if you
Yes.
can write down how you felt about it. I know that a lot of times if we get an idea or we are thinking about something that really kind of like it's inspirational and we want to write it down, sometimes we forget that there's a feeling associated with that. Like you were feeling really excited about it. There was this idea that like made you feel lonely or sad or whatever. So write down the feelings associated with it too. Our feelings, much like our senses, trigger memory a lot. And then don't force the logic of it right then and there because logic comes later. Like again, when I had my dream with
Maybe.
Troy, there's not the logic involved. I mean, like you can test the logic out later. You can test the
Right, right,
logic out
right.
later, but like
Yeah.
when
I'll
it
talk about that in a
sparks,
minute.
yeah, when it
Like,
sparks,
yeah,
so you want to capture the spark, right? So that's the
yeah.
thing. So we were talking a little bit about collection like capture tools that we could use. What are some other tools that you think that authors could use? What was it you had by your bedside when you
So
had that thing?
so first, like it used to be that I had a notepad by my bedside usually. Now I have my phone.
Yeah.
Now the advantage of having your phone is that I will say that there have been moments in my author career where I had a great idea at night I got up, wrote something down in a notebook, and get up the next morning and go, what the hell is
What
that?
was I writing?
Because these are words that are associated with some kind of an idea, but I'm afraid they are not in the right order. This is
Or
I was talking to one of our clients earlier, and I said, here's the problem with inspiration and gathering ideas with like this is that there are times when you're going to miss
yeah.
and you're going to wonder what exactly you did miss. Like this
Right.
had to be a brilliant idea, but I don't know what that is. So, I mean,
Or you're writing in Egyptian hieroglyphs because you're
yeah,
still
or you
sleeping.
just can't even read your writing because you're
Yeah.
half sleep writing, things like that. So some of it is like when I had the dream that was the beginning of that book, like I wrote the scene.
Oh,
Like I
okay.
literally
Got
rolled
up,
over,
rolled
wrote
over.
the scene, put the notebook down, then went back to sleep. Now, at least part of the scene. Now, it was more of I mean, it turned out to be more of an outline of a scene than an actual scene. But, I did my best to capture as much of the idea as possible
Right.
because of having had ideas that you don't. Now, if you have your phone handy, you can either voice it,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so voice to text it, and
You can
hopefully
talk. Yeah.
the
Voice memos are
interpretation.
gold. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes there's a lot of ducks in there. In
Or
mine,
so, and because, and well, and I
uh,
think this made sense a minute ago.
actually, there is a funny thing about this. So I fixed my phone because I was like, I don't ever mean duck in autocorrect. I never meant duck, Siri. I did not mean duck. I don't go around inserting the word duck into my sentences on a regular basis, right? And then I'm working on a client's manuscript and I type the word duck and it autocorrects to a different word.
Oh no! Oh
So,
no!
so he was, it was a story about him. He was a police officer, it was a ghostwriting gig. He was a police officer and he had helped some ducks across the road. Unfortunately, I caught that before I sent it to him because I was reading
Yeah,
the
that's
sentence and I'm like, what was crossing the road?
that's
Oh
good. That's good.
my. But anyway,
Ducks, by
but
the way,
yeah,
just as a side note, ducks are like Idaho's national bird.
they're also delicious and dumb. But
The people in this town will stop and like wait for
oh yeah,
thousands
geese
of
crossing the
ducks.
road,
Yeah,
ducks crossing the
anything.
road.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
we're into
Yeah,
our fowl in this state.
yeah. And when I was into college, I was into killing those fowl on a regular basis. Duck hunting was one of my
Okay.
weekend pleasures.
Oh, gotcha.
But
Yeah.
anyway, um, but the idea is to capture those ideas, like Stacey was saying, as clearly as possible and as completely as possible. And so sometimes that means describing what you sensed at the time, like not only your feelings, but like the senses you were experiencing at the time, because that'll bring it back to you in the morning. You'll actually go back to that place. So you're trying
Gotcha.
to psychologically trick yourself because a lot of what we do as writers, a lot of what I do in my career is a psychological trick. I write in certain software. Why? Well, because I open that software, my brain thinks fiction writing, boom, we're in the thing, right? We're writing.
Hmm.
So um there's things that I do that are just psychological tricks. That's all they are. It's just to trick my brain into doing what I want it to do. And so that's a part of it is you're using psychological triggers and psychological tricks to remember things. The other thing is especially if some people in your family or your inner circle are new to who you are and that you're a writer,
Hmm.
provide them with warnings. And what I mean by that is provide them with the idea that there may be times when I grab my notebook or my phone and I'm not ignoring you, I'm not checking out of the conversation, but I just had an idea and I've got to get it down.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will, because sometimes the inspiration will come like somebody says something in a conversation, and I go, and in my brain, there's all kinds of things that are happening, but outside, nothing. Right. And so people are like,
Right.
what just happened to Troy?
Yep. Yep.
And I'm like, my brain is just working. So let them know that. And then when your brain is working like that, try to be recording what is happening in your brain. I was just talking to one of our clients earlier. We were talking about inspiration. She was talking about how she had this idea for, she was in Yellowstone National Park, had this idea for a children's book. It was so clear, right? But the rest of the family's inside. They're about to eat lunch. There's all these other
Yeah.
things going on. So you turn and you go with the family and you eat the dinner with them and stuff like that. And then you tool around Yellowstone and you go back to your hotel
And
room.
it's
By the time you get back there
done.
that night, the idea is still there, but that clarity of that spark moment is
Mm-hmm.
gone.
And that's hard.
And
That
it's
is
hard to
really hard.
recapture that.
Mm-hmm.
And these sparks will come, so they will come in different forms.
Mm-hmm.
And it's awesome to recognize what they are, because it's just like when we talked about big ideas and small ideas and all that kind of stuff, right? Which I
Right.
talk about all the time. Um, Sometimes it's an idea for the next scene in your novel. I had with
Right.
my first novel, is one of those where, like when I first started out, I would usually discovery write the first third to half of my books, and then I would plan the rest so I knew where I was going. And then I've evolved over the years in the way I do that. I still do a lot of discovery writing, but anyway, that's a whole other story. But the ending that I had in mind for that first book, like I had it set in my brain, but the one character was like, I don't think I'm going to do that. And I was like
Mm,
trying to listen to him and stuff like that. And so I began to ask myself, just as I'd be out doing something else or whatever, okay, well, what would you do then? You're not
mm-hmm.
going to do that thing that I want you to do at the end of the book. What are you going to do? And there was one afternoon where all of a sudden it was just like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm like, okay. All right then. Okay. But I had to take that moment and write that down in as much detail as I could. So really it was just a plot point in the story. It wasn't even a whole story. It wasn't even a scene. It was
Mm-hmm.
just this is what I'm going to do. This is what you have to write me doing. Right. That's all it was. But it was just that encapsulated thing.
Yeah.
Right. It was just
Yeah.
one thing. So sometimes it's not even fully fleshed out. Sometimes it's just like, this is an event, a sequence that's going to happen, and you have to fill in the rest. But if you can remember that sequence, that's really all you need for that
Right.
inspiration. So things come in different forms. So record it in the form that it comes to you. Don't try to flesh it out right then, kind of like you were
Yeah.
talking about, because
Yeah.
it doesn't work usually. Usually it does not work. So,
Well, yeah. And okay. So you reminded me of something that like I think is really important, and that is separating execution from inspiration. A lot of times, you know,
mhm.
Troy, like I always tease him about this, but like trust me when I tell you it is good, because it's one of those things that saves me from having to say, well, I prefer a typewriter. So there are times where Troy's like, we should probably move forward. One of the things that I think a lot of authors do, though, and we have talked about maybe approaching this, maybe we'll do that in the next podcast, but is tool overwhelm. And what
Oh yes.
I'm not talking about tools specifically, but I will talk about execution overwhelm. Sometimes when authors get an inspired thought or an idea, they'll sit down and they will try to execute, like you said, kind of think that through logically at that point in time, right then and there, and like make the story work right there without drafting that idea out. And in planning and plotting and trying to like force those details into that right then and there, they they scare the inspiration away. And I
Hmm.
think that what happens in that, um in a lot of ways, you lose the story that you initially were starting out with. And while it
Hmm.
maybe needed to be, sometimes it doesn't. And I will say that sometimes I've sat in some really good like jam sessions, I'm going to call them, with my clients, and we've, after I've read a book and read a manuscript, and we're doing like some, kind of not really developmental editing, but kind of like post manuscript review to kind of make sure we hash out some of the things that might be a little sticky. we'll toss ideas around, right? Like it's kind of like a big popcorn fest. Like we're just popping ideas out. And sometimes we'll get this inspiration and my client will go, "Oh yeah, great idea." And they don't write it down. And then like a couple days later, they'll come to me and say, "Stace, what was that thing you said?" And in the moment, of course, I didn't write it down. It's not my book. So I was just tossing ideas out there and seeing what stuck. And so now the idea is lost. And but oftentimes too, a client will start to draft a manuscript or draft an idea, and they'll get hung up in the weeds of the details, and then it, they'll lose the original idea too. Even when I'm throwing
Mhm.
ideas out there, sometimes they'll lose the idea because I've now taken them down a completely different detoured road. So
Right.
it's important that you understand the difference between draft and revision, and that draft is meant to move you forward and continue, throwing the ideas out there. It's the popcorn session, it's the jam session.
Mhm.
You're just throwing notes out there and you're just seeing what sticks, and then something eventually will stick. Then when you find that idea that you're like, this is the stick, this is what I want, then you can kind of let the other things go, and you can work into the
Right.
details of that. But I think
Mhm.
I want, more than anything, I think I don't want people to get hung up on the idea, well, you've got
Yeah.
to make sure it executes right away. Well, not
Yeah.
always. And you can
In
always,
fact, usually not, because you
right,
don't want to over plan it. You just want to flesh it out enough that it gives you
right,
additional inspiration that's not the spark inspiration, but that's your daily inspiration.
right,
Because as a writer, you need both.
right,
Like there's different kinds of inspiration, and the spark inspiration, the kind we're talking about, is the kind that reveals to you what's next, or
right,
reveals to you a key moment, or reveals to you a key scene, or reveals to you a cool character, or whatever, right?
right,
But you've still got to have the daily inspiration to continue writing that story, because you can't sit and wait for those sparks to appear,
right,
right? Because your muse doesn't work that way, and it'll take you forever to write a book, and your book will be scattered because the sparks aren't always related. You
right.
know, sometimes they're off the wall, and where that belongs is in a file for another story or another book or whatever. And there are times when, like, I'll have had an idea in a book and I'm like, that is not going to fit right here. And then I'm writing a different story and I go,
Then, yeah,
oh, that
sometimes.
idea that I had. So,
Mm-hmm.
so those ideas, that's another thing I was telling our
You
clients, those
shouldn't
ideas are
trash them.
never wasted.
Never.
They're never wasted because they go into this database in your brain, kind of in your subconscious. And every now and then your subconscious will be like, remember that thing? And you'll
That's
go,
that's what I was going
oh,
to say, is that
holy cow.
sometimes you have these really great ideas and they may not work in the current manuscript that you're writing, or maybe they do later on when you realize in revision you've got a hole that you're trying to fill. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
so sometimes those sparks happen to work out, but maybe not in the way you originally planned. So never scrap a scarf. Never throw one away.
Yeah,
Never throw an idea
I
away.
never throw them away unless I've had some, and usually even then I'm not really throwing them away. I'm just pushing them to the back of my head until
Mhm.
later or whatever. But I don't necessarily throw away an idea unless it's been floating around for years and I've just never used it for any reason at all. And then even then, sometimes that'll come back later and you'll be like starting a story and go, oh, this is where that idea finally fits in. Our subconscious and our brains, especially our writer brains, are weird because
Mhm.
my writer brain in this little space right here is way different than my brain when I go outside of my office. It's pretty funny because like Holly will tell me like your attention to detail there versus out here is way different.
It
And
is.
I said, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And that's why I have the thing of I have systems in place. And she understands that now. And I'm like, I put my keys in my wallet here, and you literally can't move them. Because if you do, you will throw me completely off. But she goes, but you can read somebody's book, even somebody else's book that you're editing, and you hold the
Mm-hmm.
whole story and all
And
the
hold the
characters in your head.
story. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yep, but I
Usually
can't
a few of
find
them at a
my
time.
keys.
Yep.
Well, yeah, because I've got
Right.
mine that I'm working on. Like, even like the client we were talking about this weekend, and we were kind of doing that, what you're talking about, like that after
Yeah.
manuscript review, where we're kind of brainstorming, popcorning stuff out. And
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff was just in my head. Like, as soon
Yeah.
as we started talking to her, her book came back, took first place,
Yeah.
and I started thinking through it. And then when we were done with our conversation, I went on to another book,
Mm-hmm.
doing something else, because that's the way this part of my brain works, right? So our
Right.
writer brains are often different than your regular brains.
Right.
So your family and friends, if they don't know you, they'll be like, "Wow, how can you be so scattered over here and know all this stuff about your book?" And you just have to tell them, because it's my superpower. So leave
Exactly.
me,
Right.
leave me alone.
Exactly.
But so that's why those inspiration things, like, sometimes if you don't record them right away, you'll lose them. But sometimes if you record them, even if you lose that piece of paper or you put that notebook away and it's been a long time, your subconscious brain, because you wrote it down, noted it, and that
Mm-hmm.
file will come shooting to the front of your brain when you need it.
I
So,
will also say
yeah.
another point that I wanted to bring up on this, and this is something that this is another tip that you should know. But a lot of times, back before chat, GPT came into our lives, and we could like break up, writer's block easier. One of the key tricks to breaking up your writer's block is to become bored. Allow yourself to be bored, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because your brain literally needs the downtime. That's
Mm-hmm.
why that's why when we're in the shower we get those ideas, or when we're going on a walk and we're not doing anything else, or we're sitting in an airport and we're bored out of our mind waiting for an airplane. And if you're not scrolling on your phone and you're actually looking around, you're going to get a lot of ideas. Trust me.
For
but
sure.
but what I'm trying to point out here is that you, as a writer, if this is your job, if this is something that you are looking forward to as your career and you're trying to develop your writing skills, you should create a ritual or a schedule for allowing yourself to have this inspiration, right? Give yourself that
Right.
ritualistic time to allow your brain to go into those free spaces in your mind. So maybe like Troy, you schedule you do your same writing time every day. Like you have the same time you sit down at your desk at the same time to write every day. Maybe you just like me, maybe it's a drink. Maybe it's something where you sit down and you just like when the weather's warmer. One of my favorite things to do is in the afternoon when I start to hit that afternoon slump, I will go out in my backyard and have my Dr. Pepper, and I will sit on that back patio and just listen to the birds and toss the ball for my dog. And I'll get some ideas. Like I get ideas, I'll be thinking about something or a problem with one of my clients' manuscripts, and maybe, I'll get an idea for that. Sometimes people will listen to music, right? They have certain music lists that they'll listen to, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll help them inspire them. Or you sit in the same, even it could be as simple as you sit in the same chair, and that's your chair, that's your thinking chair, right? But create
Mm-hmm.
those moments that you're giving your brain the chance to say, signal, this is my thinking time. This is my inspiration time. I'm inviting
Right.
my muse to come talk to me. Um,
Oh, yeah. And let me make a note there, because
yeah.
of we're talking about that, is, as an author, it is very easy nowadays to go to something like chat and say, give me 7 ideas for this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Potential ideas
Mm-hmm.
for this thing. And it spits out ideas, and usually one or two of them is worthwhile. Here's the thing, don't do that right away.
Yeah. Give your
And this
brain a
is
chance to come up with it
the
first.
the reason is, yeah, the reason is your psyche has its own ability to do that. So one of the things that we often say is, people take showers or baths, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and this was before phones were waterproof and you could just take them wherever you wanted. But
Right.
please don't, I
Just
mean,
give yourself a
go,
second.
yeah, give yourself a minute without your phone. So go for a walk without your phone, without technology. What they
Right.
call, and now they've called it, a lot of people now they call it naked running.
Oh
or
yeah.
naked walking.
Yeah.
And what that means is
It's
don't
just no
strip.
devices. It just means no
Especially
technology. That's what it means.
if any of the elderly people in our 55 and older community are listening to
We're not
this,
talking about
please,
nude. We're not co-ed naked
please,
volleyball right now. That's not what this is.
we're not making this into a nudist 55 and older community.
No.
We prefer you with your clothes on. But yeah, preferably lots of them. But anyway, um, but
For my
but
own
the
sake.
point is that you go without technology. So without music, without your phone, without anything
Right.
like that, you just go and you're out in nature, because that's the way we used to do it before we
Right.
had all this technology that was so easy to take with us.
Right.
And the reason is it allows your mind to work its
Right.
subconscious magic. And this is one of the things that we as people do in today's modern very connected world, is we don't allow ourselves to do often enough, is just allow yourself to be disconnected and bored. Because
Right.
when we're bored, what happens? I'm going to just
Yeah.
scroll for a minute,
And
right?
I'm guilty of this. This is not
Oh,
something
me
I'm not
too.
guilty of.
Oh,
Like we're all guilty of this. So Troy and I are not telling you anything that we don't already struggle with ourselves.
yeah.
But it is something to kind of get into the habit of. I heard once, and this is another kind of, I don't know, it's a scary kind of idea. I don't like the scare tactics, but one thing that did kind of scare me a little bit is that I read an article once that said something to the effect of that by using chat gpt too much, you will shut your brain down, and that in that ability to kind of drum up your ideas. I can't remember, there was some study that they did, and anyway, there was some
Hmm.
citation or whatever that was brought up, and of course, um it scared me, but not enough to stop using chat when I needed it. But I will say this, it is an interesting thought, and it is something to consider and think about, and probably be more, I guess, intentional with your time to make sure that you aren't shutting down that creative space in your brain, because it is
Yeah.
important to keep that alive. That is where innovation comes from. That's what makes us as a human society kind of continually
Well, yeah. And
grow.
like, so there's some things that people are doing that I've seen people doing as we become more conscious of this. And one of them is like, now I have time limits on my phone for certain social media apps and stuff like that. And I get so much time on those every day, and then they shut down. Now I
Mm,
can override that,
yeah.
but if you override it, generally I feel guilty. I'm like, why
Hmm.
am I spending so much time on this? Right? Because the average American is spending around 5 hours a day on their phone. Now, if you don't believe it, just activate the screen time feature on your
Yeah.
Apple phone, on your iPhone, if you have one. There might be other things on
I'm sure
Android that
there's
work
one
the
on
same way.
Android too.
I'm
Yeah.
sure they're the same thing, but activate that. And at the end of the day, look at how much screen time you have. And in some cases, you will go, oh,
I know. I
crap,
already know mine is so
that
high.
is not good. Like, that is way overboard. Also, there are companies like Netflix now, like when they made the new movie The Rip, they said what they evaluated on was, is this a good two-screen movie?
Oh,
Because
whoa.
people are typically looking at their phones and watching TV at the same time. So they're like,
I am
don't be
guilty of
afraid to
this.
repeat things. They tell the actors, don't be afraid to repeat things. Don't be afraid to bring this in more than once, because people aren't paying attention.
That's probably true.
So there's that. Like, in fact, like we watched the new Running Man the other night. Decent,
Okay.
decent. It was fun, but Holly has certain movies that she's just not that interested in. And so it just didn't grab her attention.
Okay.
So, she was looking at her phone the majority of the time that we were watching that movie. And
Yeah. Is
so I was
this
joking
the?
with her the other day, and I said, "Do you want to watch the new Running Man again?" Because it came up, of course, on our Amazon or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
Prime or whatever. And she goes,
Yeah.
"I didn't watch it the first time. I'm not sure I could watch it again." you
Oh.
know, because she didn't really watch it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because she wasn't interested. So she goes, "I don't know if I necessarily want to experience that again." But so people are like, if they get bored of the movie or TV that they're watching, they're actually creating a second distraction besides the TV, and they're looking at their phones at the same time. Now, we're probably all guilty of doing this from
Oh, I
time to
know. I
time,
know. I'm
right?
guilty. I know I
Like,
am.
But here's the thing, if you allow your brain to engage with that story, even if it's not a great story, there are times when I will get inspiration from another story, or I will learn something about story by paying attention to a story that isn't that great.
You know what's really interesting about this is my best friend, she's embarked on the whole, the Lord of the Rings back in the theaters thing. She bought the tickets and did the whole thing, right? And she, of course, she says she was like, it's one of my favorite movies. I call it my brain cleanse because whenever I need a brain cleanse, I do a trilogy. Like I do a marathon. That's
Mhm.
what I do. That's how I kind of get my story mind reset, right? Um, but she said there's something, she told me, she was like lecturing me about this. She's like, there's something about sitting in the theater and like focusing in on that movie for, again, like you're not distracted, you don't get up to go
Yeah.
pee, like you're in it, right? Like because you've paid for it, you're in the seat, like the screen is like bigger than life, like this is the thing. And she goes, and it's just, she says, I can't believe how much I cried during the Fellowship of the Ring. She goes, I cried almost the entire time. She's like, I couldn't believe how emotionally impactful that movie is. And I'm like that with the last one, the Return of the King. I'll cry that
Mhm.
entire movie, but it's true. Like she's right, and I think it's
Well, yeah.
because one, you are taking away all those distractions. It is very much part of the writing process to remember to stay focused on the process of writing. Like, right? Like it's something
Mhm.
I'm very guilty of this. Like, this is one of the reasons why I have not gotten my book done for about, I've been writing a dark comedy about my mother-in-law for years since the day I killed her. And I've been trying to write this book, right? Like, and so, and you guys think I'm kidding, but that's not,
That's a whole other
that's a whole
story.
other story, but it's an amazing story. I can't wait to get it published. I can't wait to get this thing like written, and because she changed me in so many ways. And I get so distracted, and it is the main reason why that book has not been written. And that is that is a movie in my head. Like, guys, that is
Right.
like it is something that goes on in my head all the time, but yet I still haven't gotten the words on the paper. You guys have to spend the time to actually do that, and it's very, very
Yeah.
important.
Well, and
um
that focus time is really important. What I'll tell you, and that I've seen people
mhm.
doing too, is just take your phone and lock it. So they sell these boxes on Amazon, the phone lock box,
Yeah, yeah,
and you put
yeah.
your phone in it and you set a timer. Now, if it's an emergency, you can still get your phone out with a little combination or whatever. But like it's a challenge to do it, and
my
you're going
hair
to feel bad,
My
right?
hairdresser just told me about one called The Brick. Have you heard about
Oh,
this?
yeah, the brick, that's an app that
Yeah,
shuts off things on your
it's
phone,
actually,
and you
yeah, a
can
thing
set
that you have to
timers on it.
touch your phone physically to it. Yeah. So it's like, it's a
Hmm.
really interesting thing. So my hairdresser was telling me about that.
Yes.
She said
So
she
it's
got The
very good
Brick.
to do things like there's things that you can do, like you change the set point. Like actually I have a shortcut on my phone where I change the color set point and then I can change it back. And what that does, it changes all
Mm,
your apps to gray. You know what's not interesting? A gray app.
gray.
It's very difficult for that to be just, you have to be very intentional to go to that grayed out app.
Right.
Now you can still, it's still, your phone is still capable, but like, and people will say all the time, well, I have to have my phone near me because of my kid or because of this, because of that, whatever. Guess what? First of all, your kids will survive. I always tell my kids, and they're grown now, but even when they were younger, I'd be like, you know who you call in an emergency? 911. I am not a paramedic, a fireman, or a police officer. So if you need help that badly, call 911. If you don't, it can probably wait. Because I was even more disciplined when I had kids with not having my phone around. It's easier for me now because I get fewer of those type of interruptions, right?
Yeah.
Because my
Yeah.
kids are gone, um, or they've all left the house at least. So anyway, but creating that distraction-free environment for you is one way to hang on to those inspiration ideas and to find new ones. So
Right.
do things like go do some Tai Chi Don't follow a video on YouTube to do it. Don't do any of that. Just learn a few little moves and go do yoga or Tai
I
Chi
like
or
that
whatever it
idea.
is that you want to do with your phone in the other room where you cannot access it, and not with YouTube on your TV so you're watching a video.
Hmm.
So that
Yeah.
it's just you feeling the energy around you, meditating, doing those things so that your brain has that time to process things. Because the problem with a lot of the things, and when we talk about tools, we'll talk about this, but the problem with a lot of them is that they're designed to help writers write faster and spend less time on just the thinking part of it of staring out a window. But writing is about thinking and feeling. And the more you think and the more you feel as you write, the more the reader will think and feel as they read.
Right.
That's
That's true.
just, that's the way that it goes. No tears in the writer, no tears in the reader, right? All of that stuff that they say, it's all true, right?
So,
So,
well,
yeah,
I will quote one of my, well, I'm not really quoting him. I'm just gonna remember there was one time I was talking,
paraphrase.
paraphrase. I was talking to Michael Brent Collings one time. And I remember one time, and this is like from what you were saying, it kind of leads into my next step. But one of the things he was talking about is that he liked to go to the movie because, again, he liked to analyze story, right? Like it was one of his things, and he considered it work because he was there and he was
Hmm.
analyzing story. Um, so one of the things that I think is a really good way to kind of keep inspiration coming to you is to also feed the well, right? Replenish
Hmm.
your reservoirs,
Read,
right?
read,
Read.
read, read.
And not just reading in your genre, but reading outside of your genre. um I think that one of my favorite types of books to read are business books. They're very, very, very boring. But and most of the time,
Most
like
of
Troy
them,
says,
most of them.
most of the time what Troy says about them is that, and it's totally true, is they're saying the same thing, they're just saying it in their own different voice, right? Like, so they often
Hmm.
say the same thing over and over again. But I do love them. One of the things that I do love about them too is that they're outside of the genre that I'm writing, right? In fact, I love mystery thrillers. I like reading horror. I know it's crazy. I love horror books. Dean Koontz is probably one of my faves. Although I haven't read him for a while because the last time I did, I thought I had demons attacking my house and I had to take a break. Um, I'm not joking. But anyway, I get my imagination is live and well, folks. But yeah, so like things that I like to read are not the things that I like to write. Like, so it's
Hmm.
kind of a good idea to do that because what it does is it broadens your scope, right? It like helps you understand and know how to explain things differently in maybe that genre that you're writing that you maybe wouldn't have normally understood or
Hmm.
been able to see the analogies or the metaphors
Or you
had you
can
not
bring new
gone.
elements in.
Right,
Like you
right.
can bring new elements into your writing that you stole from another genre, but that add a new depth or a new twist to the things that you're working on, which those are all the things that help you stand out. And I used to say, like you said, I used to say read, and now I say consume story
Yeah.
because there's so many other ways to consume story. Because then people be like, well, does listening to an audiobook count as
Oh no,
reading?
yeah.
Yes, it's
Yes,
a
it
book. It
does.
counts as reading. I mean, I'm
It
like, I think
counts.
we're over that debate now, but people would ask me that question. I'm like, they'd be like, is that cheating? No, it's not
No.
cheating. It's
I
just a
will
different way of
say
consuming story,
I will say that
you
there is
know.
a different way that your brain operates when it comes to the way
Hmm.
it consumes and remembers things. That's why writing physically, like as opposed to typing, even to physically write something out, it actually does something different to your brain and the way you're consuming it. So just be aware, like
Yeah.
you can, but know what works for you. Like Troy says, make it work, just make it work.
Yeah.
Music, of course, I'm a big music fan. Like I know Troy is too. He listens to music while he writes. Having one of my favorite things to do is have conversations with people. Just talk to people,
Hmm.
and don't have conversations with people to find out what you can add to the conversation. Like listen, listen. I remember one time I was talking to this guy. I'm not kidding. This guy was like cleaning an office building. I had come into contact with him. I was leaving late after a meeting or something, and I saw him and he was standing by the elevator. And I said, "Hola," because he was listening to Spanish radio, and he said, "Hi," and he says, "You speak Spanish?" And I'm like, "Uh, very little." And
Poquito.
he immediately just dove in, like all Spanish all the time. And I'm sitting here completely, totally not lingual in any way, shape, or form. Like I forgot English, people. Like I was sitting there
Yeah.
going, huh, what's he saying? But listening to that man for about 15 minutes and just nodding, I learned so much about this guy. I knew he had kids. I knew he had grandkids. He was very excited about telling me about his grandbabies. Um, I learned that he didn't really like his job. Like there was a bunch of things that he was like saying, and of course, it wasn't the words, guys, that I was listening to. I was taking in the man before me, right? Like I was like, and I learned so much from that conversation. It was one of those moments where I was like, oh, it doesn't always mean, like, words don't always mean everything, right? Like this was one of those moments where I was
Hmm.
like kind of experimenting with my own brain. But oftentimes having conversations with people, it opens your brain up and your mind up to ideas and things. And like I know,
Hmm.
Troy, you've told me you've had a few encounters with people that you're like, oh, that's a character in
Oh
my
yeah.
book.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've had so, and that's sometimes where those inspiration sparks come from. And I'll also tell you that one of the ways, okay, so there's a thing. So if you're just not feeling it, you're not feeling inspired, one of the things you can do is change the place where you're writing. So this
Oh
is
yeah.
called the coffee shop phenomenon. You go out and go to a coffee shop or somewhere else with your laptop or whatever and sit down to write. Now, if you want to get some free inspiration and also improve the dialogue that you write, put in earphones with nothing in
With
them
nothing on. Yeah, just
and then
listen.
sit there because what you're doing is eavesdropping on conversations without going,
Right.
because that's weird. Okay. So don't, and those listening, I'm putting my hand in my ear and all that kind of stuff, but because that's weird if you're like, people notice but if you've got headphones on, they think you're not listening.
Right.
And it is
And those
amazing what people will talk about in
it
coffee shops
is.
that they think no one's listening. And I'm like, I did not need to know that about your anatomy, but thank you so much because you just became a character, right? Or that just inspired me to think of something. Oh, you have that kind of allergy? I wonder how that would play out in a book. How
Right.
could that affect my character? Oh
Right.
my, I'm going to write that down. But also, you can just absorb the ambient noise of a coffee shop a lot of times. It's really just good for your inspiration and helps you write,
Yeah.
right? And it's a different place than when you're normally writing, so it resets your brain, especially if you say, before you leave the house, you say, I'm going to the coffee shop to write and work. And your brain takes note of that. Oh, we're going to the coffee shop to write and work. Then you arrive in the coffee shop and your brain says, oh, this is the coffee shop. We're going to write and work now. So it's one of those psychological tricks that you're doing to your brain, but it works. It
Right.
works. Your brain picks up on that and it works. So you can, that's ways to get inspiration, but also just to keep that inspiration going
Right.
and keep that muse going because you've got to, and we should talk about this on another podcast because it's really almost a separate topic, but it's talking about that daily inspiration where
Yeah.
you've got to train your muse
Right.
to show up,
To show up.
right? You can't wait
You
for
do
your
have to
muse to show up.
understand that, yeah, like inspiration is cyclical, right? Like it does come in cycles. It's very much like my brain power in perimenopause. Like sometimes it's working and sometimes it's not. And I
And sometimes you're
understand.
buying bookcases off of Marketplace and having to refinish them. I don't know. That's
It was
probably not
all
related at all.
the
Let's
the poor boy, he just wanted to go to Indonesia and I wanted to help him get there. Can't help myself. Anyway, oh my gosh. But honestly, problem solve in stages. Like understand that sometimes like you can't force it, right? Like sometimes trying to, like I said earlier, sometimes you can't force the logic into the story. Sometimes you can't force the muse to show up. But like know and understand that if you create a routine, that more likely it is going to show up, more likely it is going to help you, and you emotionally have to process that inspiration as it comes in, because it can come in at times when, like if you're angry. Yesterday Troy and I were kind of all tense and uptight, right? Probably not a great time to sit down and feel like writing a love story. Like it would have probably not worked out well. Somebody would have been murdered. But like it would have just been one of those things. Like, so you just have to remember that processing it, you emotionally have to be in a good place at the same time that you're receiving that inspiration. So give yourself and your subconscious a chance to kind of set yourself up for success. So
yeah.
you know
Or
trust.
use that bad mood to write that
Right, or use
poignant
it for
moment,
inspiration.
use it for inspiration. Well, yeah. And I mean, it's the biggest thing to understand is that inspiration, especially that daily inspiration, is just like, it's not always this super powerful thing, but writing and telling stories and all of that stuff is an addiction,
Right.
right? I mean, it really is. And it's just one of those ones that we don't necessarily want to cure,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's
We don't
just
want
it's an addiction. You get addicted to the adrenaline, the dopamine of finishing a story or finishing a scene or finishing a chapter or creating that cliffhanger or that clever phrase or whatever. And you kind of hang on to those moments, right? And there's different ways to achieve that. And there's like, we can talk about that actually in depth in another podcast. Um, but there are some, allowing yourself to be bored, not turning to technology and things right away for an answer, but instead waiting, showing some patience. A lot of times you'll end up with a better story and it'll end up in a better place. Or you can use those tools to get some inspiration. A lot of times the things that they offer you are not the answer, but your brain will come up with the answer because you gave it these alternatives that it said, no,
right.
I don't like any of those. This is the one that I like. And we've kind of talked about
Mm.
that before too. So that can cause, even arguing with someone can cause some inspiration
Yeah.
in your brain. So
Yeah.
use all of that, use all of it,
Yeah,
but just be
use all
sure
of
you're
it.
capturing those things,
Right. Use a
don't
tool
let
that
that stuff
works for
go.
you. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't let the ideas go, and don't let them go too long. Like if you can't write them down right that second, at least give yourself something to trigger the memory later so that you can remember it.
Hmm.
And remember that professional authors are not always, they're not always inspired right away, right? They're not always like professional writers. They have to show up consistently, right? So
Hmm.
understand and know that if you're doing this as as a profession and you want to be an author business, that you're not going to be writing just one book. Maybe that one book was an inspiration, but to keep writing, that's because you're showing up consistently. So be consistent about the way you treat
Hmm.
your inspiration and your muse, whatever you want to call it, but be consistent about that and you'll be more successful going forward. I
Hmm.
didn't mention this before. I should mention it now. Like, subscribe, and follow. We would love to have you be part of our author panels. We would also like you to continue to tell us what you would want to hear from us. We are very, very open to what you guys are suggesting. I'm also happy to announce that we will be bringing on IP and copyright attorney Bradley Frazier on the 23rd of February. He decided to do the 23rd of February.
Oh,
Oh, well,
23rd. Okay,
actually,
gotcha.
that's the 23rd. We'll be talking to him, but it will be that week, the week of the 23rd, that we'll post that podcast. So I'm really excited about talking to Bradley about getting his take on some of these issues we've recently talked about, and then just again reiterate kind of like the importance of keeping your IP protected, because in this world, I mean, without going down that rabbit hole right now, but like I'll bring it up when we talk to Bradley, but it's one of those things that, like, the reason the copyright law was even established was because we wanted authors and creatives to be part of the same scientific community that spurred society toward progress. So that is an important, and that's inspirational, isn't it? Like in its own, in its own sense.
Protecting your inspiration, protecting your IP matters. And we understand that copyright laws need some revision.
Yes, they do.
But we also understand that even in their current form, there are things that you can do as an author to protect your intellectual property and your story.
Yes,
so
exactly.
We want to talk to, I mean, the reason we want to talk to Bradley about that is obviously he's on the active side, and he's an attorney who says, hey, wait a minute, how about we operate inside the law, Troy? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, good idea.
Yeah,
good idea.
It's a good
Not
idea.
So bad.
He's also an author, so he has some insight about being an author too. So, you know, he's an author, and he's what attorney isn't really nowadays, but like, honestly.
Well, many of them have left the law profession and become novelists.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing like finding inspiration in law school to do whatever your heart's desire is.
I'm sure those guys, honestly, they get so much inspiration, I'm sure. But anyway, so we're really excited about Brad coming to talk to us. And so just be aware that's coming down the pike. But we are also open to any kind of suggestions that you guys as authors have. I'm holding my tiny scissors again.
Yeah. For those of you not watching, she has traded her Sting for a small pair of scissors.
So much stuff on my desk.
We are
so
going
distracted.
to try to, even as we end this podcast, keep her from running. With those, it's not.
No running with scissors. But anyway. Yeah. But anyway, so again, we really appreciate you guys. We really appreciate you hanging in there when we go on these tirades and these rants. And again, like we said, our goal has always been to protect author rights and making sure that you guys are able to have the tools and the inspiration to run your author businesses directly.
And speaking of that, next week we will talk about tool overwhelm.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I'm going to give you some advice that I got recently, and I was like, oh, this is the answer. So, or at least part of the answer. Part of the answer. I'm probably.
Did this come from Shell Honecker?
No, it came from Steph Pajonas. She wrote a great article about AI tools, and I was like, shoot, I was just scrolling AppSumo, so I needed this today.
Oh, good. Yeah, you go to AppSumo is like your vice. It's so bad. Anyway,
the problem is it's for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, so they create this cool stuff.
I know.
I want all of it, but not all of it is relevant to my business or what I'm doing. And also, there is something to be said for limiting tools. And so we're even going to talk about AI tools and stuff like that. And I'm going to just give you some examples, and stuff like that.
That'll be good. But
give you at least kind of a formula and a pattern to follow.
That's a good idea.
Certain things that you need and certain things you don't. And so just, we'll talk about
We'll talk about that next week then.
And maybe I'll do a better job by next week and offload some tools before we talk. So anyway.
Sounds like a plan. I'll stay off Facebook Marketplace.
There you go. Can you chat with Holly about that? Just send her a text.
I'll just talk to her. But anyway, well, everybody, again, we're grateful for you guys. Let us know if you need anything, and you just keep reading, be kind, and stay weird. I will talk to you guys next week with Troy. See you later. Bye-bye.